Suprabhatam.
Suprabhatam.
We'll wait for 2-3 minutes.
Yes, KKG, sure.
Yeah.
We are on 37, verse 47,
40,
sorry.
47.
47, verse 47.
We completed 47, I think.
We've completed 47, then I didn't
Yes.
make any notes on it. Okay.
Jnana Chakshusha. I think we did that.
We did that. Okay. Let me, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we completed 46.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think
Yes,
so.
Krishna. Yeah.
Jnana Chakshusha, I made a mention about the pineal gland and the third eye.
You did,
That's
but
what-
was that with the reference to the earlier one,
Yes.
to 46?
No. It is Jnana Chakshusha.
Huh?
It is with reference to the eyes of the divine eyes.
Hmm.
Okay, well, no problem. We can do that also.
If you can just sort of quickly take
Yeah.
us through 47 then.
Yes.
Thank you. Because I usually make some notes on every verse, so I have got
Okay.
nothing for 47, so I'm wondering.
Yeah, okay then. Maybe I think next time onwards, I'll
Yeah.
just listen. I'll just listen to the last part of the recording.
No, I'll make a note. Don't worry. I'll mark it in my book.
Okay.
I'll mark
You
it.
can mark it with pencil the date.
Yes, I will. I'm keeping it ready. I'll mark it and we'll know exactly.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can start the prayer so that by 10:05 we can actually start, Krishna Paniji.
Okay.
Huh? Okay. I think Ram is in Kerala, so
Okay.
we can do the prayers.
O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is also one with every other. Om Bhuvasvaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Dhiyo yo nah prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Dhiyo yo nah prachodayat. Om Bhuvasvaha. Om Tatsaviturvarenyam. Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi. Dhiyo yo nah prachodayat. Asatoma Satgamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti. So, shall we start?
Yes, Krishna Paniji. 10:05 we can start.
Yeah. Yes. I'll just wait for a couple of seconds. I think it's yet to be 10:05. Yeah, it's 10:05 now. So we'll
But you
start.
have to share the screen, right?
Yes, I'm going to share the screen. Yeah. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We are going to take up the 47th verse, which I remember somehow having done it, but it doesn't matter. We can just take it up. Samyak Vijnanavan Yogi Swatmanyevakhilam Jagat Ekam cha sarvam atmanamikshate jnanachakshusha. The yogi, endowed with complete enlightenment, sees through the eye of knowledge the entire universe in his own self and regards everything as the self and nothing else. Vijnanavan yogi. See, the term yogi is used here to indicate the state of consciousness that is required of the aspirant. Yoga, as you understand, means one who is integrated, one who is not dissipated, disintegrated, scattered, which is the normal, mental state of most of the humanity. Our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our very process of perception of the world through the five senses is fragmented, is scattered, is in a very dispersed way. So unless one brings about some kind of integrity, some aspect of the whole thing being integrated. Integrated does not mean concentration. Integrated here means bringing all the resources together and allowing those resources or upadhis or indriyas to function to their fullest extent. That means they operate at their highest level of efficiency and effectiveness, and the whole perception is something which is universal. And the term Vijnanavan is also used. Adi Shankara, in the commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, says Jnana is what one receives from the Guru and through the scriptures. That is called as Jnana. I am deliberately not using the term knowledge because knowledge is something very incomplete. Rather, the Greek or Roman term of gnosis, which also comes from the word jnana. That's why you have the spelling with G, starts with G. Gnosis. The G is silent and you pronounce it as gnosis. That's where we other terms like gnostic, agnostic, and other terms have come. Gnosis means knowing through an integrated process, not only the what you call as the senses who act in a very partial manner, which are very limited and fragmented also, but allowing the mind to operate with the kind of attention which is brought through a process of integration. So jnana, according to Adi Shankara, is something which is acquired from the Guru and the scripture. Whereas Vijnana, Adi Shankara says, is experiential wisdom or experiential gnosis. The knowledge there is not merely based on the scriptures or the words. The knowledge which is not merely based on verbal and written communication. The non-verbal understanding, the non-verbal direct experience, that is pratyaksha jnana. Pratyaksha, as I mentioned, has two aspects: direct and immediate. The word immediate also means there is no mediation there, number one. And it also means that it operates in a timeless dimension and time is not involved in it. So there is no mediation and no involvement of time. Such experiential wisdom is what is called as Vijnana. And he uses the term Samyak also. Samyak means that which is very proper, very right, very holistic and comprehensive. In the Buddhist literature, you find this word Samyak used with all the 8 noble truths or eightfold noble path. The 4 noble truths and the eightfold noble path. Samyak is translated or is in Pali, they call it as Samma. There is an invocation to the Buddha which also says Samma Sambuddhassa. So he is Samyak. He is complete, comprehensive, holistic, which is unfragmented. So such a yogi sees the whole world in himself, in his own self, in his own Atma. Akhilam Jagat, the entire world, entire universe. And he sees the unity of life and unity of consciousness also. There is nothing else beyond his own self, the Atman. Ekam cha sarvam. He sees the whole thing, everything as one. Atmanam. Ikshate. He sees that unity through what? Through the eye of jnana. Jnana chakshusha. This means specifically referring to not seeing through the physical eyes or mental eyes. It is beyond that. There is a pair of eyes which is holistic, which is comprehensive. Through that eye you see. And in yogic terms, when you talk about Kundalini Yoga and the chakras, this Jnana Chakshu refers to the pineal gland, which is said to be about 1.5 inch behind, that means inside the brain, about 1.5 inches from the forehead. So approximately it comes almost to the center of the Sahasrara. That means if you drill a hole here and hole here, the intersection point would be the pineal gland. A lot of information is available about the pineal gland, as I mentioned. You can look at the scientific and spiritual aspects of the pineal gland, which is supposed to refer to the, connected to the Sahasrara and all that. We need not go much into that Shastra, which is a separate subject by itself. So this is what is the experience of a yogi. A yogi who has direct and immediate perception of the Atman being nothing other than the whole universe, and that there is the Atman and nothing else, which is seen through these Jnana Chakshu. So, an indication is given for our understanding that there is a state of being and a state of consciousness where one experiences this immensity and the infinite nature of the Atman, which literally occupies the whole manifested universe, and nothing is beyond that Atman, and nothing is other than the Atman also. So that is the principle that is being talked about here. One danger with all these statements is we try to convert these into concepts when we are dealing with words and a verbal communication. The verbal communication should never be taken seriously at all. The verbal communication has a severe limitation. So when you hold on to words, hold on to the description, there is always the danger of missing out the experiential part of it, the essence of it. There is that possibility of missing out on that. So hold on to the words lightly and maybe make an attempt to transcend those words, the verbal descriptions, and question the whole thing, question the whole process, whether such a state exists or not. We have to look at it from that seriousness. I am not interested in the words, I am interested in the essence of it, knowing the truth behind the words. Because that has to be borne in mind whenever we are studying any scripture, any book for that matter. It is only an expression in so many words which is somehow trying to convey a meaning much deeper than the words themselves indicate. So that is more important. Let us not go on discussing about what is this Jnana Chakshu, what is this Sarvam Ekam, or what exactly is this Atman. Because when you talk about it, you are getting trapped into the words. That's the reason why we go to the Mandukya Upanishad every time. It says, Adrashtam, Avyavaharyam, Agrahyam, Alakshanam, Achintyam, Avyapadeshyam. All negative terms are used. That which is invisible, that which does not brook any kind of transactional association with anything, that which cannot be grasped, that which has no attributes, that which is beyond thought, that which is beyond thought, and that which is incommunicable. Participants, may I request that you mute yourself. So, therefore he says Sa Atma, Savijnaya. That is Atma, that which you are supposed to come to terms with. You have to experience it. Now, how do you visualize consciousness? Consciousness as a term is very beautiful. How do I visualize consciousness? I can only visualize consciousness not in its pristine, pure, and independent form, but only through association with an instrument like the body. That I am able to do something on my own. I have this volition in me, and the ability to move, the ability to do things on my own is an indication of the functioning of the life principle, which is a limited and conditioned manifestation of that consciousness, about which we actually do not know anything. So, as human beings, we can only experience the presence of consciousness in association with an instrument like the body and the emanation of life through its activities. As I said, it is born, it grows, it moves, it changes, it modifies itself, it decays and it dies. These are the changes which we observe in the body, which are not necessarily factors of the body alone. If some material thing is to be visualized, you can visualize a stone. In a stone, all these things are there, but in a very dormant and at a very low level, and its life could last for millions of years, like that of a mountain. Though though there also there is some change and things are happening. So when we visualize what is called as the Atman or consciousness or life principle, our understanding is only limited to the extent of bodily functions. Along with that, body in the sense, I include the body-mind complex, which includes thought, which includes emotion, which includes feeling, which includes expression of visualization and imagination, and as outlet for the senses, or the source into which all the senses dump their inputs. That's the mind, and it proceeds from there. So sufficient, I think it is suffice to just understand from a mental point of view that there is a principle which is by definition infinite, and therefore it occupies the whole of manifestation, and also there is a principle of unity wherein there is no fragmentation, no division, no duality, and therefore no conflict and confusion. That's what is being talked about, of a yogi endowed with complete enlightenment, samyak vijnanavan yogi, atmanamevakhilam jagat, ekam cha sarvatmanamikshate jnanachakshusha. As I mentioned, and I keep repeating myself, we are trying to grasp or come to an intuitive appreciation. The very term intuition means that there is no tuition, that there is no process, no practice, no effort, no kind of movement in time. Either you grasp it or you don't grasp it. You simply have to grasp it. That's all. There's nothing beyond that to be done. That means you don't make unnecessary extra effort to somehow catch hold of something. You can't catch it. Agrahyam. You can't really catch it because it's not amenable to that kind of thing at all. Okay? Then we will go to the 48th one. Atmaivedam jagat sarvam atmanonyanna vidyate mrudo yadvat ghatadini swatmanam sarvamikshate. He is continuing with the same theme of the previous verse. Atmaivedam jagat sarvam. The tangible universe is nothing but the Atman, verily the Atman. Nothing whatsoever exists there is other than Atman. Atmanaha anyat navidyate. And again, a traditional, example or allegory is given here. Mrudo yadvat ghatadini sarva swatmanam sarvamikshate. As pots and jars are verily clay and cannot be anything but clay, so to the enlightened, all that is perceived is the self. Swatmanam sarvamikshate. Everything is perceived as the self, just as there may be 1,000 objects made of clay, but the different objects may have different shapes and colors and purpose and whatnot, but essentially they are all made of clay. So one has to see the clayness which is inherent in all the objects that are made of clay. Similarly, you have to see the Atman in all manifestation, in all its myriad variations. So that's what is to be seen. And you also perceive that unity, wherein you come to this understanding that there cannot be anything other than the Atman. Nothing whatsoever exists that is other than Atman. Atmanaha anyat navidyate. It cannot be anything other than it. We come to the same idea, same statement of Ramana Maharshi when he said, where is the other? There is no other. When there is no other, what do you see? You see that there can never be any conflict, any contradiction, any expression of violence or hurting or doing anything to anybody, because it is as good as doing it to myself. I don't kick myself, I don't slap myself, I don't beat myself, I don't hurt myself. Why is it? Because I am the self. When you are the whole universe, where is the principle of violence there? Where is the scope for the existence of the very things which we call as violence or hatred or jealousy or envy or any of the ordinary human feelings and emotions have absolutely no place there. Absolutely no place there. So that is the beauty of this perception or this pratyakshanubhuti or aparokshanubhuti of the Atman, which For our purpose of description and explanation, we have called it as an undetached spark of the divine fire and also a unit of that consciousness, the unfragmented unit of that consciousness, which is essentially the ultimate reality or the Brahman. And therefore, it cannot be anything other than that manifestation of that unity and universality. So the idea of seeing essentially the principle of that ultimate reality manifesting in everything in this universe. That is the reason why Swami Vivekananda made a statement and said that I would touch the lowliest of human beings, the feet of the lowliest of human beings, not because of what he is and what he appears to be, but realizing the fact that what operates through him is also the principle of that Atman, that Brahman. And therefore I bow to such a person also. Recognizing that unity. Now, for an ordinary person, it may appear to be very disgusting and despicable. Huh? If I say somebody go and touch touch the feet of some politician whom you know what he is, it will be very repulsive. But for a true yogi, he has lot of compassion. There's great amount of compassion because he sees the level of ignorance in which that person is wallowing. What becomes apparent to him is the level of ignorance in which such a person is caught. And at the same time, he also sees that the presence of Atman is very much in him also. The fact that he doesn't recognize it is a different issue altogether. Because even if there to be some minimal amount of perception or realization of that principle of unity and universality of life and consciousness, obviously I will not behave in the manner I am behaving. I will not be behaving in the same manner. That is the reason why a very interesting statement is made by the commentator here. I'll read that out. This realization of the identity of the self with the universe enables a wise man to cultivate fearlessness and love for all. I would slightly modify this. I am not very happy with the term cultivate. Cultivate means effort. Cultivate means making an effort to do something. Let's forget about that word. Let's not give too much importance to the words, but try to understand the essence of what is being conveyed. Such a person is totally fearless. The element of fear does not touch him. Why? Because fear is always associated with our own personal desires, hopes and anxieties, not getting what we want and losing out on what we have. This is the basis of fear. So when you see the whole universe as one, where is the question of gaining and losing? Where is the question of hope and desire and anxiety and fear for that matter? And similarly, love for all. It is essentially in that state, I am loving myself because I am no different from the universe. So my love manifests as universal love when I see the principle of unity and universality in operation. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, this aspect is brought out very beautifully. Abhayam hi vai brahma bhavati ya evam veda. He who knows it as such becomes the fearless Brahman. Abhayam hi vai brahma bhavati. Abhayam, 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 he says, abhayam vai brahma. So, fearlessness is a very important element in the whole domain of the Atman. You see, fear is considered to be universal because of limitation. Ahara nidra bhayamaithunam cha samanyametat ashubhir narana. For animals and human beings and all living creatures, 4 factors are common. Ahara, food, nourishment, nidra, rest, sleep, bhaya, fear, and maithuna, reproduction. Indulging in the desire for reproduction, the sexual urge in all creatures, all these 4 factors are common to all living creatures. Fear is an integral part. Only when you transcend fear and become fearless, then you will know the truth and beauty of it. You will come to it. It's without effort. Because there's nothing to be afraid of, nothing to fear. And similarly, you will also see that effortlessly you become compassionate and loving. Your love and compassion encompasses the whole universe. This is the beauty of it. This is where you see that there is nothing beyond you. And now we can correlate to the secret of Jiddu Krishnamurti when he said, I don't mind whatever happens to me. Whatever happens to me, because it doesn't make any difference to me. Even losing my physical body, losing my life, losing my whatever I have has nothing. It doesn't disturb me in any way. It doesn't cause any agitation in me or any difference to me. I don't mind whatever happens to me. He said is my secret. The world is not agitated by him. There is no impact either way. He does not cause any agitation in the world, and any agitation in the world is unaffected. He is unaffected by it. This is the beauty of it. Obviously, the whole direction of our evolution should be ultimately to become fearless. The beauty of all transcendental wisdom is that the transcendental wisdom, when you come to it, you also come to realize that you are no different from that wisdom. You are that wisdom, you are that Atman, you are that Brahman. Unlike any of the worldly knowledge or worldly subjects, if I learn physics and I become an expert in physics, I will be only an expert in physics, but I can never become physics. I can never become mathematics. I can never become chemistry or biology, or for that matter, any subject. Whereas, when I come to Brahman, I become Brahman. Brahmavit Brahmaiva Bhavati is the Upanishadic statement. A Brahmavit, loosely translated, it means a knower of the Brahman becomes Brahman himself. That is the beauty of it. That is the difference between the transcendental wisdom and the lower level of knowledge, which is through a process of acquisition. We come to it through a process of acquiring it. Here there is no acquisition, there is no effort, there is no movement, in fact, because all movement happens within the spatio-temporal framework. When you are beyond the spatio-temporal framework, there is no movement either in space or in time. That is the beauty of coming to the realization of this Atman. I would urge the participants not to go literally by the words when I say you come to it or you go to it or you reach it. All that is unfortunately is the limitation of the words. You neither go anywhere nor come anywhere. Nothing happens within the realm of the mental consciousness, within the realm of thought. It is beyond words and thoughts and action also. That is the crux of the coming to that unity and realization of that universality, and also the essential aspect which permeates, which imbues, which is integrated and universally spread out through all manifestation, is that the essence of that Brahman, which is no different from the Atma. Okay, so any chat, I see some chat, I'll just stop sharing for some time and some chat is there. Okay, Binaji. Verse Bhagavad Gita 6:29 says the same. I don't recollect that verse immediately. Possibly the same idea. As I said, the same idea is there in all the scriptures, and Bhagavad Gita is no exception to that. I cannot recall 6:29 to my mind immediately. Then Binaji says, fear come. Yeah, yes, sir.
Can I read out that, sir?
Yeah, please.
Sarva bhutasmam atmanam, sarva bhutani satmani, ishide yoga yuktatma, sarvatra samadasna.
Samadarshana.
Samadarshana, my pronunciation is not
Yeah. That's the same idea. What you said is correct. It is the same idea that is conveyed here.
What you said, the experience and the expression, sir.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you stressed on that so much.
Yes, we
in the
discussed.
first class.
Yeah, we
Yes.
discussed that. And I have added another dimension also to it. It is experience, which is diluted to expression, and that expression is extrapolated. The extrapolation is also there. We think that it will continue in a linear manner in the way we want it to, or the way we imagine. It doesn't happen that way also. So extrapolation is a further dilution of the expression. You see, I have experienced something and expressed in some manner, and you take my expression and then modify it and project it as something else, then there is a further problem in that. Okay?
And Sri Aurobindo's synthesis of yoga, there is a chapter on gnosis, sir.
Yes, yes. Yeah, as I said, the term gnosis, the root of that from the Indo-Aryan language group comes from jnana. That is the reason why the G, the spelling, the word, you have the G in it, which indicates that reference to jnana. Fear comes from living outside of oneself. It always is in relation, say, to something else. Yeah, Beenaji, yeah, that is true. Fear comes from something else. Huh? Sarvabhutastham atmanam sarvabhutani jatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshanaha. Very good, sir. Very good. Thank you, Sarangi ji. It is the same idea that is conveyed. All the bhutas, all beings are in the Atman. Is nothing but the Atman, and all beings are in the Atman. And he who sees this, Yoga Yukta Atma, one who is integrated and sees this as the same everywhere, Sarvatra Samadarshanaha. Thank you, Sarangi ji. And this is what we wanted to do. And shall we go to the next verse, or we'll postpone the next verse for the time being? We will have some discussion for another 10 minutes. I also have to go. We have to close it by 11 o'clock. So if there is any point to be discussed, I request the participants to share their views also.
Sarji,
Yes. Can you, oh, you are on mobile?
yes, Sarji.
Okay, okay, right. Tell me, sir, tell me.
Sir, these two verses are beautiful verses to take you to higher level of consciousness. And remaining in the timeless dimension, it is absolutely, you feel, elated, you feel very good. The moment you comes to Vyavaharika level, there is so much, how do we remain at Vyavaharika level?
No,
with
why should you remain?
No, but this has to be in the background, or how do we deal both?
Sir, if one is truly in that state, that intelligence will dictate how we should operate in the world also.
Yeah, you said it earlier.
If that is not happening, it means that we are not yet firmly established in that state.
Yes.
And not able to truly integrate ourselves.
Correct.
That is an indication. That's an indication that we have not yet adequately prepared ourselves to receive it.
Correct.
We are only receiving in small drops and trickles. Other than that, we are not able to realize anything. I see Mohit Dwivedi here after a long time. How are you, Mohit?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
Good to see you after a long time.
Yeah, I used to check all the videos on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. Any point for further discussion? Meena Nirula ji, Janaki Ram ji. Hello. Janaki Ram ji has left just now. Yes, I think he left just now. Meena Nirula ji. Suman Goenka ji, Vijay Lakshmi Magal ji. Yes, please, Meena ji.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you if here does the experience of the yogi count? The experience that he goes through to reach that ultimate.
See, what happens is the preparatory level is such that it goes on and on and on, and you come to a tipping point. You come to a quantum leap from there. You take a quantum leap from that point. So the yogi has to prepare himself adequately to come to that point where he can take a leap into the timeless dimension. So all our sadhana is in a way limited to coming to terms with the whole of our being and intensifying it to come to the tipping point. You have to take what is called as that, come to that escape velocity. That is the only preparation you need. So therefore, you have to start from oneself. One has to start from oneself in whatever state one is at this moment. That can be the only beginning point. So all sadhana should be to understand where one is and also see the futility of all these activities of the mind, of thought, of emotions. The futility of that has to be seen very clearly. It is that clarity of perception that matters, nothing else matters. In traditional terms also, Adi Shankara has insisted upon vichara, atma vichara. You have to move in that dimension. Vichara, the term vichara comes from the term chara. Chara is to move. Vichara is that state of awareness where you become, you get that tremendous clarity. Only that can bring about transformation. That clarity should be such that it should come and strike us on the face, strike us very hard. Then we know, yeah, what have I been doing all my life, wasting my time and running after these things and nothing happens, nothing seems to happen.
So here the mind is always analyzing to and fro.
Yeah, that has to stop. That analysis, as Krishnamurti used to say, analysis will lead to paralysis.
Yes, that's what your video said yesterday.
Yes, so analysis can only lead to that. Nothing, it can't be anything else.
So that is occupying the mind all the time if you are...
Yes.
But that's pretty hard.
Why do you think in terms of hard and easy? What is easy? You tell me.
I know. Atma Vichar is not easy.
No, Atma Vichara, forget about it. Anything else, worldly life also is not so easy. But it's not a question of ease or comfort or our ability to do or not to do. It's a question of opening our eyes and seeing it.
Yes.
What can be more simple than that, you tell me? What can be more simple than opening our eyes?
Right.
We don't do it. We're not interested in it. We are not willing to face it. Sarangi ji says, is it coming to a state of blankness where no negative aspects have any value and nothing disturbs devotion to the steadfastness? Sir, please don't mind. What I'm trying to say is, these are again a group of words which you are trying to conceptualize in the mind. Don't conceptualize, sir. Because, see, we are used to it and therefore we feel comfortable by conceptualizing and ideation and putting it into so many words. No, see, sometimes we are thinking something deeply or something is occupying our mind and we may be staring blankly at the wall. So that blank staring at the wall, is it meditation or is it attention? Sometimes we don't even know what we are thinking. So it's not in that state. It is that state of clarity which I am talking about. Is it very, very clear that fear is born out of thought and time? If there were to be no thought, can fear exist? If there were to be no time, can fear exist? Try to grapple with these questions. I'm not asking you to give answers. We are not interested in the answers from the mind. Can there be fear in the absence of thought? Because thought creates division. Thought creates this sense of fear or hope or anxiety or desire. Similarly, time. Tomorrow something may happen, which is imaginary, which is in our mind. But I am sitting here and feeling terribly anxious because yesterday something happened, and therefore tomorrow also it can happen. But scientifically and even statistically and mathematically, is the past any indicator of the future? No. Past can at best be a source of imagination about the future, but it can never be the future nor any indicator of the future. So
Sir.
yes, sir.
Sir, I was not trying to say blank being unmindful.
Blank being?
Unmindful. Being unaware of things, being totally unmindful, that blankness. I'm not saying about that.
No, even otherwise also, Sarangi ji.
Again, I agree that it is a figuring of words and all that thing. But you feel your mind actually cannot express.
No,
but
by expressing we are creating a hurdle.
But the point is, anything which tries to hurt you, the thing is dissipated. You don't feel anything. That is what is this type of state actually I was trying to mention.
Yeah, see, but what happens is, you are in a state unaffected by anything because thought and time are not in operation.
And why actually I come to that particular state? Because yesterday I was feeling bad about it, but today same type of thing is not affecting me.
No, that's only a modification.
It's a modification, correct.
But I'm talking about something beyond modification.
Beyond modification, correct.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Neither this nor that.
Thank you, sir.
That's the only idea. No, that's the reason why I sometimes very jokingly say that one fellow is talking so much is enough. If more words are added to it, it gets diluted or it gets confusing unless you grasp the essence of it, unless you come to terms with it. That's my only humble submission. Umesh ji?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Any your observation or any question from your side?
No, as far as what was spoken today, I think I'm able to grasp it. So I have no question. My
Thank
question
you so
though
much.
remains open about what I wrote to you this early morning.
No, I didn't
Early
see that.
morning for you.
I didn't have time to go through it because I was preparing myself.
Should I repeat?
WhatsApp? Did you send a WhatsApp message?
Yes.
I don't
Should I
find it
repeat?
here. Yeah, yeah, please, please.
It says,
Let me see.
the
One
quote,
minute. Yeah.
the human spirit exists eternally and is subject to natural laws, playing the
Oh.
game of life in this ever-changing field of action.
Oh, yeah, that was yesterday's, I think, not, yeah, I think,
Yeah.
yes, I saw that. Umesh Dhagarji. Yeah. Yes, 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 I remember. The human spirit exists eternally and is subject to natural laws, playing the game of life in this ever-changing field of action. Yeah, the idea, the human spirit here refers to that Atman, which exists eternally. Yeah.
Since it says subject to natural laws.
Yes, the Atman, as I said, is conditioned.
So we are talking about Dehatma.
No. The
Lower
Atman as a
self.
principle itself, the Atman as a principle itself is a conditioned expression of the Paramatman or the Brahman.
So the Atman at our level is conditioned.
Yes.
So it is limited.
Yeah, because it is in association with so much of matter.
Okay, it's okay.
Okay.
Understand. It's it's
So
confined to the body.
Yes, therefore, essentially it exists eternally, but is subject to natural laws because it is associated with matter. That's where I have also tried to explain the difference between life and consciousness.
So this talks about life.
Brahman,
yeah,
at one level of conditioning is Atman. Atman at another level of conditioning is life. Another fourth level of conditioning is life. And a further conditioning is the gross body. That is, the Brahman becomes the Atman becomes the Jivatman becomes the Dehatman. So it's a progressive conditioning and entering into limitation, one after the other. Because it is not happy where it is. It is not happy where it is, and therefore it is trying to become grosser and grosser and grosser because we enjoy grosser experiences. If we try to look at ourselves very carefully, we are looking for bodily and mental enjoyment. That is our primary objective in life, isn't it? Our primary objective in life is bodily enjoyment, sensual enjoyment. And beyond the body, mental enjoyment. We want to be in a group of Bhagavad Gita group on WhatsApp. Want to be in a group called the School of Ancient Wisdom. We want to be a group of something else. This is also a mental enjoyment only. It is a mental enjoyment. You try to understand this. The fact of the matter is, we are running after pleasure. But mind may not be willing to accept it so easily. Sir, this is satsang, no? This is this thing, no? I am trying to do something great and spiritual and evolve myself. All that is nonsense. The truth of the matter is, if you face it, you find that the pursuit of pleasure is our main objective of living. And in that pursuit of pleasure, it is always associated with fear. It is always associated fear in the grosser form or subtler form or any other form. Come to terms with that.
So sense gratification sense gratification is linked to fear,
Yes. Yes.
which means expectations leads to fear.
Expectation, hope, anxiety, desire, and whatnot.
So here can we say the sense of incompleteness, the unfulfillment of things.
Obviously, that's why that's another term for limitation. It's another term for limitation. But my point is, do you see that? Do we see that directly and immediately? Do we see that this is the game the mind is playing? If it were not for this, the self would be satisfied in the self. Atmanye Atmana Tushtaha. Bhagavad Gita says the self satisfied in the self. If the self were to be satisfied in the self, why the hell will I come to these Bhagavad Gita classes or conduct these webinars and all that? Because when I am satisfied in myself, this has no meaning. Everything becomes irrelevant. That it has not become irrelevant, that it is very important to come on to and join this webinar at 10 o'clock on Sunday is itself an indication that the mind is seeking some form of gratification.
Yeah, very true.
And we are not truly very serious about it. We may be reasonably serious, but not serious enough to stake our entire life for it. We're not willing to stake our entire life for it.
And we are aware of it, that we are.
No, but we avoid it. We are at the background of it, aware of it, but we avoid coming to face it directly. Because the consequences are very dangerous. The consequences of coming face to face would mean simply dropping everything and walking away from it. Simply dropping everything. But is it possible? That's the problem. That is it. Walking away in the sense, not physically walking away or going away somewhere, but totally being disconnected with this because it's irrelevant to me.
But Sarji?
Yes.
The pleasure seeking may be at the lower level, but many times when you become mature, you start asking the question, why I am here, why the world is here, what is happening? These questions come up also, isn't it? For looking for,
Yes, that's only a projection of the mind.
Projection, not the mind. More than that, it is the, at the end of going through all the years.
Sir, that is frustration, sir.
Not frustration, to seek the
then,
truth.
What truth? What truth? Where is it? Is it outside you?
No, it may not be outside or inside, but I want to know why I'm here, why I was born.
So the knowing itself is the problem. The I is the problem. The knower is the problem. The dichotomy of I am the knower and I want to know something is itself the biggest hurdle.
My goodness.
You see the problem now. No, it is mind baffling, isn't it? It is mind boggling.
Mind boggling, but it comes to the mind. No, it comes to the mind.
So observe it. Observe it without any motivation. The no motivation of knowing, coming, truth, ultimate truth. See, because you asked me to speak, I can speak 1,000 statements which are nonsensical. But if you are affected by them, it is not my fault. You called me and I am talking.
Yes.
I am also foolish enough. Just because you wanted me, should I speak? I should also shut up. Then you come to that state of Dakshinamurti. Chitram vatataror mule vruddha shishyaha gurur yuva. Gurostu maunam vyakhyanam. Am I
No, no.
able to transmit that experience non-verbally to you? Is what matters. That is the point.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So you have to, sir. This is yeah.
Sir, you are taking us through all this study things so that we open ourselves to that grace which has to come through.
No, madam, don't use any of these words because they are not going to affect me. The fact of the matter is we are running round and round and round like in a merry-go-round with so much of scripture, so much of words, so much of explanation, so much of commentary. We are not willing to let go the merry-go-round and fall and go tangentially away from it. That is the fact.
I
That is
think
the
the fact is also that we are all subject to the so-called illusion and Maya that is
Yes.
dominating.
Yes,
And
yes,
we are
yes,
exposed to such talk or reading material. For
yes.
the time being, we are influenced and we
Yes.
stay in that influence.
Right.
But moment later, it is taken over by the same material world, same Maya,
Right.
same Prakriti, same.
I think you're also fearful to let go, no?
No, who is saying this? Let go.
Me.
Who is that me?
Okay.
You see the trap in which we are falling.
Yeah. I know. That's the whole problem that we
No,
are.
no, madam, with all due respect to you, you and I don't know.
That is true.
So if you make a statement, I know, is again a statement out of ignorance only. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know. Can we live with that
I
statement?
know, Krishnapani ji, I know I'm ignorant. That much I know.
No, but that this knowing is no knowing according to Krishna ji.
Right.
Vijay Krishnamurti says this knowing is no knowing. The moment you know that you are ignorant, you should be out of ignorance. Will you sit on fire for will you sit on fire for 10 seconds?
Yeah.
I know this is fire, but I'm enjoying it. Let me sit on it. We don't say that. So it should be that real. It should be that real. That is what precisely the example of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. He took that fellow to the Ganga river and put his head in the water, not allowing him to come out. Then he literally pushed Ramakrishna Paramahamsa into the water and came out. Then he says, do you feel that you want that realization in the same manner as you wanted to breathe when you were underwater? It should be so intense. Then only it matters. Otherwise, this knowing is no knowing. Okay? I'm trying to emphasize upon this so that it gets registered and the mind stops playing these games. That is the whole purpose of it. So thank you very much. Thank you so much. Suman Goenkaji, can you close the session with Loka Samasta?
Thank you, Krishnapani. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krishnapani ji. Thank you all. We'll meet again with Krishnapani ji on Friday for Bhagavad Gita. And then on Sunday again for Atma Bodha. And the rest of the school programs are all there on the WhatsApp groups and email to you. All right.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank